We're now joined live via Zoom by international affairs analyst dperry. Good afternoon to you, Dan.
Well,
So, what are your thoughts? We just heard from the legal expert. Was Trump acting, above the law? Like, was there really a motivating factor or cause to do what the United States did?
look, I think that basically this is a case where people have to decide if the ends justify the means. In this case, the end is the removal of a terrible dictator who was illegitimate. The means are also illegal under international law and probably also under American law because Congress did not authorize this action. That's just the end of the story. It's extremely rare in life to be removing the leader of another country and kidnapping them to New York to stand trial. Some people will tell you that the Biden administration flirted with something similar when they put a bounty, a $25 million bounty on Maduro's head, but that bounty does not constitute legal authorization. Only Congress can do that. So is it unprecedented? You'll hear the Manuel Noriega kidnapping from 1989, essentially, and he spent 17 years in American jail was somehow similar. Some will say it was different because he wasn't as widely recognized. But there's no denying that this is a case of two opposing vectors. On the one hand, miscreants all over the planet may be given pause. I'd be thinking in this case of the Iranian regime, who Trump has warned that the U.S. is locked and loaded to protect their people from being shot in the streets. I think this action in Venezuela suggests he may not be bluffing. On the other hand, it undoubtedly legitimizes lawlessness from the country that theoretically would have stood for the rules-based international world order until recently. So I could see bad faith players like Russia and China using this to justify actions against people they deem illegitimate. It's an extremely complex and dicey situation. Trump isn't helping it by appearing on television and suggesting that this is about taking back Venezuela's oil because of some claim dating back to the 1970s, saying he's going to run Venezuela. That's a little absurd. The Venezuelans should run Venezuela. It's a delicate moment where it's not clear if this will ultimately be seen by history as something that was justifiable.
And, with that said, also the motivating factor, was it politics? Was it, at the end of the day, does it come down to economics? Does it come down to the oil?
It would be extremely sad if the conclusion of history is that this was about Venezuelan oil. That is usurping. That is completely illegitimate. The other argument about the narco-terrorism, it's not without any merit, but it's weak because Venezuela accounts for a very tiny proportion of the narcotics entering the U.S., and at best, it's a transit hub. The main sources of the narcotics are Mexico and Colombia. That until recently were seen as unlikely targets for U.S. attack. But of course now Trump, in his exuberance, is also threatening the leader of Colombia. I have heard also that it may be about other commodities and minerals. I think basically you're looking at one mass decision. And Trump needs a victory on the international stage. He has failed to achieve the peace between Russia and Ukraine that he bragged would take him but a day. This situation with Venezuela has been a festering wound in America's neighborhood for over a quarter century, since Hugo Chavez began his project in 1998. If it can somehow be eased into a return to a version of liberal democracy in Venezuela, that would be a huge victory for the people of Venezuela, first and foremost. But unfortunately, when we hear Trump's bellicosity over the weekend, it sounds like it's about something else. Much depends on whether the system in America will restore a version of sanity here. And I think to that degree, to that end, Marco Rubio may have to play a role.
Right. And what about the U.S. is standing as a beacon of democracy? I mean, the fact, that President Trump did this, it wasn't like it was Iran that we knew things that could happen. It was just we all woke up to this news in a way.
Look, it's very dispiriting, but the U.S. at this point under Trump is by no means a beacon of democracy. Trump personally very clearly projects that he appreciates authoritarians as strongmen. He seems to prefer Putin to Zelensky. He seems to prefer a whole host of authoritarians to anyone in Europe. He disdains the alliance between the U.S. and Europe, or so he suggests quite often. He specifically, in his new national security strategy, said that the promotion of democracy around the world is a mistake because oftentimes it was directed at countries that weren't ready. So the U.S. has backed away from any notion that it is a leader of the free world and a beacon of democracy. Trump himself is viewed by much of the world as a sort of would-be authoritarian in the mold of, others in Europe that one gets tired of mentioning the names, but Erdogan, of course, and Orban in Hungary, and to a degree Netanyahu in Israel. All of them are trying to defang the judiciary and get around the judiciary and weaken the gatekeepers and centralize power in the executive. And Trump is part of that. So I fear that ship has sailed. The real question for America, in more general terms, is whether it can be restored after Trump.
All right. Thank you very much, as always, Dan Perry.
My pleasure.